Good morning, everyone. Today, the session is all about developing a research proposal in order to submit your research report at the end of your second semester. During the end of your first semester, you have to present your research proposal. And then during the second semester, that is, you have to submit your research report. Now, this is a journey. You start your journey by developing the research proposal, and you end your journey by submitting your research report. Why take this journey? According to my personal experience, I have understood that I have developed a range of skills due to engaging in research. You know that when you go for internship, that you develop a range of skills. Now, those who do not follow a degree program, who do not read for a degree, they do not get this opportunity to do research. By doing research, you get a distinctive competitive advantage over the others because it contributes towards developing your analytical skills, critical thinking, writing skills, and these are some of the skills, and which will help you all for career advancement. So when taking this journey, you have to understand when developing your research proposal, what a research is, the methodological approaches to research, which is quantitative and qualitative, methodological approach to research in accounting, contents of a research proposal, and unsuccessful research proposals. So what is research? A research always begins with a problem. Without a problem, you cannot begin a research. So you're trying to find a solution to a problem by discovering the reality which will contribute to the body of knowledge. ප්‍රශ්නයක් පදනම් කරගෙන තමයි පර්යේෂණයක් ආරම්භ කරන්නේ. එහිදී යථාර්ථය සොයාගෙන යනවා. ඒ තුලින් දැනුමට දායකත්වයක් ඇති කරනවා. So always you have to remember that a research commences with a problem. In other words, an issue. Without a problem, you cannot begin a research. Now, how to find a research problem? There are many ways of finding research problems, and these are some of the ways. What are the existing social problems? Now, you know, in the present day context, there is a crisis in Sri Lanka. In such a context, how and why there was a transformation in the role of the accounting professionals in Sri Lanka with the COVID-19 pandemic. Actually, from the commencement of the pandemic, that the crisis began, and it got aggravated due to various problems, various reasons, and thereby the role of the accounting professionals in business organizations have changed. So you can look into that. So that arises with existing social problems. Then what is the gap in the existing literature? Now, prior researchers have done many studies with respect to ACCA UK securing markets outside the UK even after independence from the British. Then there are no studies on SEMA. Then how and why FEMA was able to secure its largest market in Sri Lanka from the period 1965 to 2015. Therefore, within the Sri Lankan context, what actually took place, you could understand. Then what are your personal experiences? You know that some students follow internship training in audit firms, some in non-audit firms, some in audit firms, indigenous organizations, some in audit firms, in big four audit firms. So there is diversity in the training. So those are your personal experiences. Then how and why diversity in the training processes brings in heterogeneity into the profession. Diversity in the training bringing heterogeneity. Heterogeneity means, again, diversity, vividatva into the profession. Then what are the new social trends which could be possible areas for research? You know, with respect to the accounting profession, there are technological developments taking place. These are new social trends that would be a threat to the work carried out by the accounting professionals, and there could be a reduction in the demand for accounting professionals' work. So what is the relevance of knowledge disseminated to the accounting professionals in business when performing professional work? Because you have to understand in that prevalent context, what are the changes taking place, and then what are the new developments that should be brought in to the curriculums in order to disseminate knowledge which is relevant to carry out work. So these are all ways of finding out research problems. And another way would be, what are the research interests of the supervisor? Actually, different supervisors would have different research interests. So therefore, it is important to find out what the interests of the supervisor would be. Then, methodological approaches to research. There are two methodological approaches to research: quantitative and qualitative. So it is important to understand what research approach to be adopted when carrying out a particular study. What is the research approach to be opted for in researching issues in the sphere of accounting? With respect to accounting, what would you opt for? Is it the quantitative approach or the qualitative approach? Now, if we consider natural sciences and social sciences, examples for natural sciences would be zoology, biology, chemistry, physics. All these are natural sciences. Now, the quantitative approach is used in such natural sciences. For example, you know, recently there was an issue with respect to the fertilizer used for paddy cultivation. So what factors contribute to the growth of paddy cultivation? So it is a cause and effect. What sort of fertilizer you use, that depends on the harvest that you get. So we could see that the reality, yatarthya, we can find out in an independent way, and that reality is there in that particular object. For example, we can see, oh, the paddy cultivation or the paddy, the cultivation is taking place, and we could find out actually what was required, what we didn't provide, and why the cultivation was less. Then in social sciences, for example, anthropology, sociology, psychology, these are social sciences. Then how and why there is sustenance of rehabilitation for use of multiple substances in Sri Lanka. Actually, මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය භාවිතය ඉතා විශාල ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙලා තියෙනවා ලංකාවේ. ඒක තමයි substance කියලා කියන්නේ. Multiple substance, ice, and so many other substances that people use. And you know that people who use substance, they are being rehabilitated. In that particular process, sustenance of rehabilitation, පුනරුත්ථාපනය කරාට පස්සේ එය තව දුරටත් තබා ගැනීමට හැකියාව ඇති වුණේ කොහොමද යන්න සොයා බැලීම. Then what do you have to do? You have to interview those people. You have to interpret what they are saying, and you have to ask them. It's within the minds of the people. They will say, oh, I got addicted to substance because of these needs of mine were not fulfilled. And then I came out of consuming substance through this particular way. And I was able to sustain the rehabilitation that was obtained because of these reasons. All these are within the minds of the people. You know, people's minds full of emotions, full of feelings. It would change from time to time, from place to place, from person to person. So we see that it is quite subjective. It is not objective. It is quite different from the paddy cultivation when it comes to human beings. So therefore, we say that natural sciences, you could use the quantitative approach where you do the causal analysis, but in social sciences, it is not possible because it is all it is related to human beings who are quite context dependent, changes because of their changing emotions, feelings, experiences, and all those things. Then it can be argued that the quantitative approach is superior to the qualitative approach to research. Do you agree or disagree? Discuss. Now, do you think that the quantitative approach is superior or the qualitative approach is superior? What do you think? So methodological approaches to research has its own strengths and weaknesses. Therefore, without being biased, getting into camps, first consider the research problem to be addressed and thereafter decide on the methodological approach to the research. It is quite evident from these. Now you see how and why there was a transformation in the role of the accounting profession in business in Sri Lanka with the COVID-19 pandemic. You see that here it is all depending on the particular context that is prevailing in Sri Lanka. It is different from the context that prevails in another country. The situational realities are inherent only to the Sri Lankan context. Then how and why SIMA was able to secure its largest market in Sri Lanka? In Sri Lanka, it is the country that which had people who really wanted a British education, Tamils who were marginalized, who wanted to go abroad. Then the university was not producing employable graduates. They wanted another qualification. Then there were people who were wanting to go abroad for work because there were no lucrative economic returns earned in Sri Lanka. So there are so many reasons inherent to the Sri Lankan context why people wanted to do SEMA. And such situational realities are relevant particularly to Sri Lanka. Then how and why diversity in the training processes brings in heterogeneity into the profession? There again, it changes based on person to person, based on the training that they obtain. Then what is the relevance of knowledge disseminated to the accounting professionals in business when performing professional work? So the knowledge will be disseminated in different ways through different programs to the professionals. Now you see how and why and what questions are raised here. And can somebody say these first four questions, what is the research approach that should be used? Can somebody tell me, please? What is the research approach to be used? Even from your chat box, can you tell me? Is it the quantitative or the qualitative? Even from your chat box, can you tell me? Even from your chat box, can you tell me, is it quantitative or qualitative? One person is saying qualitative. Sachin is telling qualitative. Gayanga is telling qualitative. Very good. It is qualitative because how and why and what questions, where the situational realities within the prevailing context, it all depends upon the people, what is there in the human mind, and this changes based on time to time, person to person, and we cannot bring in generalizations based on based on our data. Okay, so then the final question, what company factors contributed towards implementing advanced management accounting techniques? Here, what question, but it is the causal analysis. Company factors, the diversity of the company, the geographical location of the company, the size of the company. There are all these causal factors, how the independent and the dependent variables. Dependent would be implementation of the advanced management accounting techniques. So how these causal factors affected the implementation of the advanced management accounting techniques. That is a quantitative study. Now you could see that qualitative as well as quantitative research problems are there. So we see that we have to consider what the research problem is and opt for the appropriate research approach based on the problem. So developing a research proposal based on the qualitative approach. Based on the qualitative approach, now there would be different ways of writing research proposals. But based on our department guidelines, you have section 1 background, section 2 literature review, section 3 methods, and then the references which are formatted based on the Harvard guidelines. So the thing is, you have to remember all these guidelines are changed based on the university's requirements. In our university, in our department, this is the normal structure that is being used. So the section 1 background. Before that, you have the title of the research. It should be eye-catching and concise. It is said, oh, the title should be sexy. It should be eye-catching and concise. දැක්කම කියවන්න ආස හිතෙන්න ඕනේ. And then in section 1, you get the background. In the background, you have to justify that your research problem is significant. How can you think about the significance? Oh, when the data is collected, another word for data would be empirics. The empirical contribution from the data, we are going to find out this, which the other researchers have not found out. Because you should not argue alone, not in a vacuum. The others, what have they found out? And we are going to find out something which is different, which is new. So based on that, that would be an empirical contribution. Then theoretical, theory-wise. No research in qualitative research is just a story. It's a theoretically profound act. You have to collect data, and to give meaning to your data, you have to bring in a theory. So theory-wise, what is novel? Then practical, oh, relevant to the practice, what am I going to contribute? Under these three ways, you could think about the significance of your research problem. You have to justify that your research problem is significant. Because in research, always a justification is important. And then you have the research problem, and then you have the research question, reviewing the literature central to the study, and you have your research objectives. I will give you an example. Now, my PhD thesis was the case of SEMA securing a market in Sri Lanka. Now, in that research problem, the research questions were gaining how SEMA gained recognition and acceptance for its work in Sri Lanka, how SEMA gained access to work in Sri Lanka. So these are the two research questions. Then the research objectives with respect to how SEMA gained recognition and acceptance, it was necessary to understand the application of knowledge in practice, understand the knowledge disseminated through the education and training processes, understand the legitimacy gained for the knowledge that was used in performing professional work. With respect to the second research question, how SEMA gained access to work, it was necessary to find out, understand SEMA gaining access to work from the public domain, understand SEMA gaining access to work in business organizations. Now you see, when you are addressing a particular problem, the objectives would address the question and the questions would address the problem. Therefore, it is necessary to break it down so that finally the problem will be addressed by addressing your research objectives and the research questions. Then the literature review. The literature would be summarized and stated in section 1 because it is necessary to show that your research problem is significant. But in section 2, you elaborate the prior studies that have been carried out. You will start with a broader area and you will narrow it down. It is known as grandmother, mother, daughter. That is, if you're speaking about SEMA in Sri Lanka, you have to speak about professional accounting bodies across the globe, then the British professional accounting bodies, then about SEMA. Likewise, you will have to, it is known as the funneling down technique. So you have to review the literature central to the study. Research papers can be obtained from research databases like Emerald, Science Direct, Google Scholar by typing the keywords relevant to the search of research paper, which could be obtained from prior studies. Now, for example, if we say profession, I will show you. Now here, if I say, now you know that the high star ranking journals are accounting organizations and society, critical perspectives on accounting, accounting, auditing, and accountability journal. These are high star ranking journals. So if we say accounting organizations and society, this research journal, AOS. Here it is accounting organizations and society. We see that this journal papers are saved in Science Direct in this research database. So accounting organizations society, volume 105. When we go to volume 105, we get research papers. These are the research papers. Search in this journal. You can profession. You can key in keywords and find relevant research articles relevant to the profession. Then with respect to accounting profession. Now this is a study relevant to the accounting profession. Likewise, you could find research articles because research papers are there in a journal. Journal papers are saved. You could download from a research database. That is what I want to tell you. And then in section 3, you get your methods. Based on your methodological approach, your methods of data collection and the methods of data analysis will change. Because you know that there is objectivity in the quantitative approach and subjectivity in the qualitative approach. Therefore, it is always important to say about your research site. In your research site, if it is a research site where, now why did I select Seema in Sri Lanka? Is it because my home country is Seema, Sri Lanka? No, it is because for Seema, Sri Lanka is important because it is the largest market outside the UK. In the same way, why study about rehabilitation of substance users in Sri Lanka? Oh, when you take the numbers, the addiction rate is very high. So the research site should be significant, justify that it is significant. And then the methods of data collection, we will be discussing about interviews, observations, archival study. These are particular methods which are normally used in the qualitative approach to research. Normally, in the quantitative approach, you use questionnaires because from a large population, you want to collect data and then you want to come into a generalization based on the data. You start with the theory where you develop a hypothesis and you then collect data and you go into a generalization. But in the qualitative approach, it is not like that. You collect data, you do case studies, you collect data until new insights are not obtained, until the point of saturation, using interviews, observations, archival study, methods like that, and you collect data and then only you try to find a theory which would give meaning to the data that has been collected. And then you use a method of data analysis like content analysis, thematic analysis, where you will be analyzing the data and you will be bringing in the theory that you have selected. Now, you must always remember that the theory that you are selecting should be inherent to the qualitative approach to research. In accounting theory, you learn so many theories. Now, for example, systems theory, that is with respect to the quantitative approach. Institutional theory, that is something relevant to the qualitative approach. It's all relevant to these objective subjective divide. And then you always should understand that when doing the literature review and also with respect to the methods, don't argue alone. Argue based on what the others have done. In your research proposal, you have to write, oh, the other researchers, you can know that from your research papers that you download. Other researchers have used this, they have done this, and my contribution is there is a gap and I'm trying to fill that gap. That is what you say in literature review. In methods also, the others have used other methods like this, interviews, observations, and I'm also doing as a researcher, I'm also adopting such methods. So always try to, and also with respect to the theory, you have to see how the others have used the theory and how you are using the theory. Always you have to justify based on what the others have done, and you have to make a contribution in what you are doing. Now, the development of the research proposal should be a success story, but there will be unsuccessful research proposals as well. Why? Mismatch between the issue and the approach. I told you these are the issues that would have to use a qualitative approach. So you have to, if it is something based on the situational analysis, based on the context, based on people's thought process, based on their minds, what is feelings, emotions, which change from time to time, from person to person, from period to period, from place to place. All these things would require the qualitative approach. But if it is a causal analysis, it will be the quantitative approach. None of these approaches are superior. It all depends upon the research issue that you are, research problem that you are going to study. Plan being too ambitious and difficult to achieve. What is the meaning of that? It is not doable within the given time period. That is being over ambitious. Problem being of insufficient importance. It is not significant. I told you significance based on the data you're going to collect, empirical contribution based on the novelty of the theory you're using, theoretical, then practical implications based on the practice what you're going to contribute. So if you don't have such contributions, no point in selecting that problem. Insufficient information about primary and secondary sources of data collection. It is said grand research designs can be made. Oh, I'm going to collect data from this place, that place, and the other place. But you're not sure whether you could actually do it. Then how are you going to do it when you are going to collect data? So therefore, be mindful about it. It is said that normally it is good to do a pilot study and see whether actually such data could be collected. Now, interest and approach of the supervisor being different to that of the student. It is very important to coincide with the supervisor's research interest and research approach. Now, if the supervisor is comfortable with the qualitative approach, then you will have to go with that. And the interests, for example, my interests are relevant to the profession with respect to education and training and gaining recognition, acceptance by the profession, and profession having links with the university and areas like that. Some supervisors may be comfortable with the practice. For example, the strengths and weaknesses with respect to different management accounting techniques, the gap between theory and practice, things like that. And then also you have to note that you would be in a dilemma. Oh, now what is the theory that I'm going to use if it is the qualitative approach? Because after collecting data, that I have to select the theory, not like the quantitative approach. That is known as the preparatory review of theories. Oh, this is the kind of study I'm going to do, and the others have used such theories. So I would also be able to use a theory like this. But you could further fine-tune it after you collect your data. So don't be scared. Oh, I made a proposal like this, and how if this is not accepted, or if I cannot put this into practice, what would happen to my final research report? Things would change, because research is not a neat and tidy process. Things change. Nothing is permanent, you know that, being Buddhist. I'm a Catholic, but I have heard Buddhists saying that nothing is permanent. Then even a research proposal is not permanent. So you could develop the research proposal, because failing to plan is planning to fail. So when you start your journey at the beginning, I told you, you have to have a research proposal. So that is your plan. But this plan would change. And when you are actually doing the research, but you must develop your plan. That is all that I have to say. Anil, do you have to say anything? And do the students have any questions to ask me? Madam, how many pages should we write the literature review, and how many minimum literature sources should we use? Normally it was said that 10 to 11 papers. It all depends upon how your supervisor wants you to do it. How many pages of literature review? I can't exactly tell you. It all depends on what your supervisor will tell you to do. Anil, do you have anything to say? Anil? Anil? Anil, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, Sanji, yes. In a way, of course, today what Dr. Sanjeevani discussed was about the development of a very good research proposal. As she explained from the very beginning and pointed out rightly, it's not something like simple question like answering a question. It involves some processes, engagement, or just use of work that you do. Again, you may throw out the work that you do, like what we call engagement, re-engagement. So likewise, it's a roughly we have given you two terms, but sometimes in developing research or carrying out research, even the time frame can longer than this. What it implies, what does it tell you, is that we need to consciously be involved with that process. And since it takes relatively a long time, your input, your entrance to the research journey really matters. There are different elements, attributes in research, but of them, research problem, as Dr. Sanjeevani highlighted, holds a key research problem, research issue, and how we get into the research issue and investigate our the cause of, like, engage in the course of action and all those things. So what I just want to mainly highlight is it has a key significance in the research issue. Of course, you will be discussing all those things with your individual research supervisor, assigned to everyone. You can develop, but you also have to have a very clear idea that the research issue plays a key role. Why I'm emphasizing on this? So from our experience, many come to research supervision sessions, sometimes without having clear idea about the research problem and the issue, or sometimes struggle. This struggle would is that you would end up, if you can end up or find a solution to that in that way, that's all right. But the danger is, so you may slip off from the main objective, and you would end up with something that is not suitable for a good research. Maybe in the name of research, you may come out with a research question, or you may find something from previous research papers and that and this. Then you would not give a kind of effort or course of action. Your contribution may not be worth of carrying out such a research. Like, it may not have a research rigor. So that's the problem. Danger is, in the name of doing a research, you may do something. You may comply with the format. You may have a fantastic report at the end of your course. Like, apparently, your research report may look good, but without having a substance. So we don't want you to face such a situation and to happen that kind of things at the end of the research. So that better we'll discuss even now. You can take up issues, or what issue that we are going to, the research problem that I'm going to do. Already Dr. Sanjeevani highlighted how you can find research problems, issues and all. Of course, you can read papers, research papers, and interrogate, question things, that and this. In the meantime, you can take into account current issues as well. So actually, in my understanding, Sri Lanka is a paradise for research, especially in management research. Nowadays, lots of public governance, like public financial management, governance, social issues, political issues. They are connected to accounting, the accountability issues. Even if you take the simple example, so nowadays, say, you have to have such a curiosity and willingness to really engage in a research, then it is easy to find a research problem. Even if you take the recent local government election, so how it, developments were taking place and the current status and the accountability issues and the role of government, how and why it happens in such a situation where the government claims that we don't have adequate budget allocation to hold the election, amidst the fact that so government does so many things and lots of waste, corruption, and other spending without being questioned, and even simply disregarding all checks and balances. Even finally, it has come up to the level of the judiciary. So they simply disregarding the verdicts given by the judiciary. So mainly it is not the parliament, but the executive and the other structure. So we need to question why, what it is really. So whether it is a system or something like why and how it's happening. Under normal circumstances, it can't happen because you have some idea about budget and a government. So government gets a mandate from the people to run the state for a given time period, 5 years or so. So every year they have to get the approval from the parliament of the public money that they intend to spend, and they are included in a budget. So budget should be approved or passed in the parliament. So in this particular situation, it has been approved. The amount which has been estimated to hold this election is more than what they want even. So government has a mandate to find money even by borrowing or revenue generation or even printing money. So that's the mandate. But since that legal mandate has been given, now the same people are claiming that it cannot be held. So it's a very good research if you want, like not only one, even many students can think of, like this is the scenario, the context. I'm just not showing you the specific research issue, but the context within which many students can come out with many research issues. That would be really interesting. As Sanjeevani highlighted, apart from other aspects of research, it should be eye-catching and should be something for the reader to be very interested. Like if someone says even that would be that can be considered as internationally important research, because such a situation is unique and may not be seen anywhere in this world. Even if you take the very bad democratic situation or even say military type government, so it's unlikely that so very basic fundamentals and the checks and balances are violated like this. But we, of course, we have some interpretation, idea about why and how it happens. But how it really happens, through what mechanism it is happening and how it is being justified. You see how professionals and other people in both camps justify and they provide arguments for and against and all those things. So then you have to scope it out to doable research, and that would be really a good qualitative research. So that is not the only area that you can do research, but I just highlighted how practical situations can influence you to think of a good research. So likewise, Sri Lanka provides, gives you lots of opportunities, even at the public expense, right? So all sort of situations are seen in Sri Lanka at the expense of general publics. So nevertheless, as far as the learning is concerned, so you have an ample opportunities to enter into research.
And this what is happening in the Sri Lankan context may not happen in another context. But in the qualitative approach, the theory that you use to give meaning to this story could be related to another context. That is how generalization is brought in qualitative research, not based on the data, not based on the empirics, but based on the theory. Theoretical generalization is there in qualitative research because it's a profoundly theoretical act. So as Anil says, Sri Lanka is a paradise for finding out research problems because of the prevailing context. But this context does not prevail in another country. But the theory can be related for similar issues in another context.
That's a good point. Then coming back to the next area. So now we like once we have identified our research problem and issue, then we need to get on to the journey of doing the research, carrying out the research, then collecting data, analyzing and interpreting them, and your scholarly contribution is required to be demonstrated in this course of actions. So where Dr. Sanjeevani highlighted the significance of the methodology. So how the methodological approach should fit to this. So she explained the difference between quantitative, qualitative, and both has its pros and cons and its relevance. Of course, it depends on the type of research problem or the issue that you are going to handle. Of course, the relevance of quantitative approach is very high, where you can demonstrate what you're really doing, and the so if you want to test something, if your research issue deals with testing something, to show what it is, and the prevalence of something, or finding relationships where variables are also taught. For example, but you need to limit, you need to understand your territory, your scope, because we are in the field of management, accounting, finance, and all. So where to greater extent, the variables or the context within which we live cannot be specifically taken out as bias-free, objective context. Unlike in the case of, as she highlighted, the pure sciences, how the world function, medicine, that and this. So there are opportunities that it's easy for you to show that there are objective realities. But especially in the field of management, it is difficult, but it is possible, of course. If you want to, if you have thought of a kind of research, for instance, if you take kind of financial market operations. So nowadays, take the example. Now, people talk about independence of central banking, monetary policies, fiscal policies. So likewise, some variables, we talk about macroeconomic stability, so within which you may find different indicators. So if you want to discuss or question about how and like why and what macroeconomic variables link to the economic development, or in other words, so what relationship is there between the monetary policy decision making and monetary policy variables with regard to economic development. So if you carefully craft or define your variable, because this not only this government, so the recent previous government also engage mainly in two different or contrasting approach about the monetary policies. Mainly they went ahead with the quantitative easing, so that is increasing the money supply, thinking that the modern monetary theory will work. When the money supply goes in, then there would be an injection or influence for the supply side, then and on the other hand, demand side as well. then the increase in the aggregate demand would promote production. So likewise, we can grow the economy, but it did not happen. Finally, it ended up with something else. And later on, once the governor took the office, so he went ahead with a totally different approach, saying that no, so contracting what we call tapering measures to contract the money supply by increasing the interest rate, the policy rates. Not only that, so went ahead, like policy rate was somewhere around 20, 15, 14, but the treasury bill rate still, treasury bond rates over almost 1 year period, just somewhere around 30%. Now, so if you take a particular research issue to see whether there is any relationship between these policy decisions and any economic outcomes, like measured in terms of identified macroeconomic variables, maybe the growth, primary balance, or loans, or whatever. So you need to read. If you define something, whether there is any relationship between these measures and any identified this thing, so that would be all right to deal with a quantitative research. It's possible, like it depends how carefully and how relevantly you have devised your variables, defined your variables. Okay. At the same time, same issue can be taken from the qualitative perspective as well. Why and how it happens. So then it links to the monetary policy decision-making, fiscal policy decision-making. You can take only 1 year data. So plenty of data is available. Even like a tapering situation, that the government claims that we have arrested the inflation, we are not printing money, and policy rates have been increased. But if you take the total money supply over last 1 year, what has happened? So because of the rolling of treasury bills and bonds, since the government revenue, so the country's economy has not been developing, so still money supply has increased. You can check it from government statistics. So if you go to the central bank statistics, how broad money, that is M2B, has been increasing, but it's a bit exceptional situation, questionable situation. They are saying something, but what's happening something. You better question why and how it happened. So what are the other things? So I think main idea, so our main the purpose of getting into developing a research proposal again is connected to choosing the appropriate methodology. If your issue is much more like aligned to question how and why it happens, it is always advisable for you to think of qualitative method. Since we are all, like today we discuss about qualitative method, so mainly in management area, lots of opportunities are there. We encourage you to question from that perspective rather than going to quantitative. But if you go for quantitative, that has to be defined separately, as I just explained you, with the same scenario. But you also may realize now, yes, the gravity of qualitative research is very high, even in this interest rate situation or the money supply situation, if you question how and why it happens. So that's